Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. For this second panel called Towards Net Zero Global Strategies, I would like to welcome and thank again our three panelists today. We have the pleasure to have with us Corinna Orbach from DWS, Berenike Wiener from Evangelische Bank, and Erik Saugestad from Storebrand Asset Management. Let's start with a simple poll question to the audience. It will help us get to know you a little bit more. So by the time the question is coming, okay, sorry. So I propose to organize this panel in two rounds. The first one will be around the why and the what. The why these three panelists have decided to join alliances and initiatives around the net zero, and the what does it mean practically for their organizations. So as you know, reducing greenhouse emission is a long journey, but it is crucial for a sustainable future. And net zero initiatives are a key ingredient of this journey. And net zero alliances are attracting more and more members, even though there are a few challenges along the way. So I would like to start and ask our three panelists, why have you decided to join such alliances? What does it mean practically for your organizations? And what is your ambition and purpose when joining? Ladies first, so maybe Corinna, would you mind starting?
Very happy to start. Thank you so much, Cédric. So yeah, let me really start with the overarching principle of double materiality, because I think this very much guides at least our thought process around the entire net zero journey. So on the one hand, we are coming from our fiduciary duty to incorporate basically all material issues that may affect our investors' investments, and also make sure that we are helping them to transition more and more to sustainable and responsible investment solutions. On the other hand, we must also ensure that we manage the impacts of our own business activities on the environment and also the societies in which we operate. So in really taking those aspects together, so on the one hand side, making sure we manage climate-related risk and opportunities for our client investments, and on the other hand, managing also the impact that we have with our operational activities, with our portfolio activities on the environment. And that really, those two components, the outside in and the inside out, really make or are really the core belief of our net zero framework and our net zero strategy. So coming then really to the point of our commitment to net zero actually. So in 2020, last year, DWS made the commitment to reach climate neutrality, and we've also joined the Net Zero Asset Managers Initiative as a founding signatory in December. And as part of this initiative, we're basically committing to work very closely with our asset owner clients to help them decarbonize portfolios and hence accelerate the journey toward zero emissions, basically, and limit global warming to 1.5 degrees. And since joining the Net Zero Asset Managers Initiative in December, we have seen quite a remarkable momentum of new asset managers joining the initiatives. Today, the initiative counts 87 members, and those 87 members represent roughly 37 trillion of assets under management, which is approximately roughly 40% of the global AUM. So pretty remarkable indeed, and I think also a fair representation of what we currently see across the industry, the broader financial industry. There's been a huge momentum in financial institutions signing up to net zero commitments. So from making the commitment, which in my view was probably more the easier part, we turned then to the question of, so how to actually deliver impact? And also the question of, what does a robust and hence also credible net zero target means? So at DWS, we responded to this question basically with 4 objectives. So the first objective really is, we want to be setting our net zero targets based on science. That means basing our activities and basing our target setting process on the latest climate and energy models available that do provide the necessary information on required decarbonization pathways. Secondly, we firmly believe in the power of setting interim targets. So we'll be setting an interim target or interim targets for 2030. And thirdly, associated to that, we will also develop a clear implementation plan that is underpinning those interim targets. And last but not least, transparency. There's an enormous value in being very transparent on what we do, at what point in time, and what the underlying assumptions are. So what we will be doing is also disclosing these interim targets, and then on a regular basis, on an annual basis, report against the progress towards these targets in context of our TCFD disclosure. So moving then to the point of how are we going to implement the net zero strategy? First of all, it will be a pretty dynamic and also multi-year journey. I think we can all agree to that. There will be a lot of change coming externally. We will see new data, we will see updated science, but also internally, our businesses are not static, we are highly dynamic. So it will be a highly dynamic process we will be navigating and managing over the coming years. And in my view, or in our view, what is critical here is really the value of engagement, because reaching net zero really means a collaborative approach. And when I talk about engagement, I mean it really across the main stakeholder groups we are engaging with. And this starts obviously with our clients. So we will continue to work very closely with our clients to help them setting climate-related targets for their portfolios, and also help them to move then more forward to more sustainable and responsible investments. This also means mobilizing private and institutional capital into climate solutions. Secondly, the second stakeholder group really are our investee companies. And we firmly believe in the value of engagement and voting. So we have the opportunities at hand to work with the investee companies on supporting them on their already defined path to net zero, but more importantly, bringing them on that path and engaging with them to set themselves net zero strategies. And then thirdly, also the engagement with other asset owners and asset managers. And I think we will talk about that also later on, but just to talk very briefly here, there's an enormous momentum in initiatives that are coming up, helping or designed to help us refine and shape frameworks, tools, and methodologies in the process of setting net zero targets. So really to sum it up, our ambition is pretty clear here. What we want to be doing is to accelerate the transition to low emission and climate positive technologies and business models, and do this via strong collaboration with our key stakeholders. Thank you, Cédric.
Thank you, Corinna, for this very thorough answer. Maybe I turn to Berenike from a banking side. Can you elaborate on these questions, please?
Yes, thank you. Yes, so constantly the Evangelische Bank is developing its processes further. We have done a lot, but of course we have not talked about every milestone publicly. With regards to our sustainability goals, the past years was again an ambitious one for all of us. We will make our contributions to support the climate goals of the Paris Agreement. In September 2020, we launched our climate strategy. The full integration of climate aspects in the entire business operations of a bank is certainly very complex. The climate strategy is based on 4 objectives that are adopted by all management teams and employees. So the 4 objectives are, first of all, we will actively support the transformation process of economy and society. Second one, we will expand our range of products and services, taking the climate-related aspects into account. The third one is we will gradually and actively integrate the risk associated with climate change, for example, physical risk and transition risk, into our risk management. And the fourth point is we will successively reduce the EB Group's greenhouse gas emission, and our aim is to exceed in the climate targets of the Paris Agreement in terms of both in its timing and also quality. And also in 2020, we signed a voluntary commitment to structure our lending and investment portfolio in line with the targets of the Paris Agreement. And together with 15 other initial signatories of the German, and it is called the German Financial Sector's Collective Commitment to Climate Action, we will finance the transformation towards a low emission and climate resilient economy and society. So the signatory plan is to provide each other with mutual support in collecting the necessary emission data and developing the measurement methods and approach to managing the banking business in line with these objectives. So I think for the starting point, I will leave it with these comments, but yes.
Thank you. Thank you. I think it's very well structured. Erik, maybe why have you joined such initiatives from your side, and what is your ambition for the organization?
Well, thank you, Cédric. For us, as Storebrand, it was quite natural to join this initiative. We've been pursuing sustainable investments for more than 25 years and joined several initiatives along the way. And we have actually joined the Net Zero initiative both as an asset manager, but also as an asset owner. And we are convinced, both as a manager and owner, that integrating ESG and incorporating climate risk definitively will improve our risk return. We are convinced we need to change and contribute to change as an organization. So joining the Net Zero was quite a natural step in this process. It's an alliance with a clear ambition. It's a useful framework, but still flexible, like the framework of the SDGs. It's, of course, particularly clear as an asset owner, but I would say it's a very useful framework also to working as an asset manager, where you are more client dependent, of course. What does it mean? Well, we've had a climate strategy for quite a long time. We started divested in coal. We have been engaged in anti-lobbying criteria. About a third of our portfolio is already fossil free. We do engage both with corporates and governments on important climate related issues. But the Net Zero commitment for us has been a very forceful and clear and ambition to communicate, and we've broken it down and brought forward very specific targets that we need to reach already by 2025. And we will reduce the carbon footprint or climate gas emission by 32% Why 32? Well, that's the IPCC 1.5 degree scenario we need to pursue. We will invest more than 15% of our portfolio in solutions. And this is true and will apply to both the portfolio as an asset owner, but also all the capital we manage as an asset manager.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all for this first round. Let's turn to the second round and try to make it more interactive. My first question is for Corinna and Erik. Is working in alliances, is it new? What are the difficulties? And because you comes from different universe, so there must be some difficulties along the way. So I would like you to share your experience.
Corinna, do you want to go first?
I'm happy to. Thank you. Yes, Cédric, I think, like, first of all, I don't think it's a new phenomenon, but what I do think is that we are all in a position, where we face the same challenges ahead of us. We all face similar degrees of uncertainties and unknowns in this environment. And hence, I think there is a shared feeling of getting together, engaging in a dialogue with asset owners and asset managers is just extremely helpful to overcome some of these uncertainties and help each other to develop tools, methodologies, frameworks to guide us through this process, and also give us a kind of an indication of what's basically a good practice framework, because in this environment where we don't have a lot of standards, where basically we can all go out with net zero plans, but there is no good and bad, there is no what's a robust and what's not a robust plan. So I think the working in these initiatives is really helpful for us to get that kind of sounding as well. And talking about DWS, we have been engaging in alliances like many, many years ago already. Now in particular around the net zero topic, what I'd like to point out is definitely the Net Zero Asset Managers Initiative, with all the working groups they are offering to help us guide on this journey. At the same time, also the different working groups that are provided by the IIGCC, for example, the Ceres group, but also the continuous work we are doing together with Climate Action 100+ on really helping on the engagement side and really putting pressure on some of the highest emitting companies to themselves set respective net decarbonization plans. Again, Erik?
Yeah, sure. And I think you touched upon many important points why alliances are, are a great tool. As you said, there is a shared uncertainty. There is a shared lack of data. We can exchange ideas about structure and pathways forward. But at the same time, of course, there are, as you alluded to, Cédric, some challenges. Of course, when we step into the ESG space, it's not as well defined as more conventional financial theory. So there are always debates about the definitions, sensible ambitions. But I do think frameworks like the SDGs, the frameworks like the TCFD and the net zero framework is useful, but they have to be flexible to allow for, if you like, different situations in different countries, different challenges for different asset owners or asset managers. So I wouldn't sort of underestimate some of these challenges, but I do think, and maybe I disagree slightly with Corinna in the sense that, yes, alliances have been with us for a long time. We've been part of them, and you have been part of them as well. But I do think they're gaining momentum in size. I mean, if you look at the Asset Manager Alliance, who would think that 1/3 of the global managed AUM would be joining in one alliance, or the Climate Action 100, which is another mega alliance. So they are gaining speed and are really impactful, I would say, at this stage.
Thank you for a comprehensive answer. Berenike, about the bank role in greening the economy, what is your expectation? Will banks also play a role in the future by making the economy more social?
Yes, I think this is a very good question. So I think, first of all, the governments, companies, and citizens all together have done too little in the past decades for protecting the environment. And we all have lost time to mitigate the effects of climate change. But now we should all join forces and set the course for a sustainable future in our own areas. We as a bank will actively support the transformation process of economy and the society. So it is quite clear that the strength of a bank lie in finance the projects of our clients and in investments we make ourselves and for our customers. So in both areas, the Evangelische Bank is focused on environmental as well as on social aspects. So I'm convinced that banks have an important role to play by greening the economy. It is a question of risk management and of future-orientated acting. So banks can strongly help shaping the future. And the Evangelische Bank sees sustainability as three strong pillars that are also mutually dependent. So it is the economy, environment, and the social issue as well. We integrate these three pillars in as many areas as possible. For us, it shows integrating all three pillars equally has been a success. It also means if a bank is able to support greening the economy, a bank also have the power to support the socializing the economy.
Okay, thank you, Berenike. Maybe to all of you, it's regarding the pathway and what are the next steps. There are some guidance coming from these initiatives, these alliances, but you have some leeways. So I think it's interesting for the audience to hear about your pathway, maybe until 2030. Maybe Corinna, do you like to start?
Yeah, happy to start. I think I alluded to some of it already in my first part. So maybe I use the opportunity now to focus more on the distinction between divestment and engagement, because I think that's a critical decision that we all need to be taking, and a critical line we need to find, because there's more and more there are more and more frameworks coming out, in particular from the regulatory side, that strengthen the importance of exclusions or divestments. At the same time, amongst the asset managers and in the different initiatives we touched upon, there's the growing view that the power of really making real world impact really lies in the engagement, in the active engagement with our investee companies, and not basically leaving that seat on the table to work with the investee companies, but really make use of our active ownership and our stewardship responsibilities here. So really like to make that point on really engaging closely with the investee companies, making sure we clearly set targets, climate-related targets, and act upon those.
Berenike or Erik, on your pathway,
Yeah,
or maybe investments versus divestments?
Yeah, I think it's a very important point, Corinna, that you mentioned the divestment versus engagement, and you know, it's also part of these differences we have in alliances. Of course, people come in with different perspectives, whether they want to, as fast as possible, reduce their own risk, or and believe that, you know, the cost of capital and avoiding funding activity is the most powerful tool, or really engaging with companies and help them on that transition. And I think most people end up trying to do both. At least if I look at ourselves, both as an asset owner and as a manager, yes, we have parts of the portfolio that is fossil free, but 2/3 of the portfolio is still invested. And for us, of course, being an engaged owner and helping companies is actually having an impact on the real economy. Of course, the difficulty is to be very transparent on what you have achieved through this engagement, because in the past, maybe engagement has been used as a, if I may use that term, sleeping pillow to avoid doing more drastic things in your portfolio. So for us, as I said, commenting on our pathway, we do both and try to cover and make an impact.
Okay, so I think this is a very good point. And when I think about a bank, we also have a very great focus on our loans book. So ambitions, goals require ambitions, implementation. So we have a very complex mix on risk-oriented demands and also the missing external data. We first turn our attention to the measurement of climate-related data. This is the basis for reducing emissions in all of the bank's business areas and subsequently managing risks. So in addition, the individual areas in a bank are becoming increasingly interlinked through the topic of sustainability. And the aim here is to raise awareness in all relevant departments and promote close cooperations. And I have a very personal ambition. So as my personal initiative for 2021, I see the ambitious implementation of our bank's climate strategy. And it is really the focus on the implementation. And we have to start now and not wait for other things or frameworks from the European Union or from whom as well. Just to start now and start to implement, and take step by step and going forward.
Yeah, action, action, action.
Yes.
Okay, maybe a slightly more provocative question for you. There is a lot of focus on climate from a regulatory standpoint, and shouldn't we look at a broader perspective, talking about more biodiversity or environmental issues? And do you, in your pathway, how do you complement or oppose the E and the S? So it's typical questions that may interest the audience. So would like to start.
Well, I could offer a very short answer, Cédric, to your question. And the answer is yes. There is, focus on climate is great, but we do have significant challenges within environmental issues, in nature-related issues, and of course also on the S and the G. But speaking about nature, it's a well-known fact that we've lost about 2/3 of the wildlife population in the last 50 years. 1 million species are at the brink of extinction. So what is not so clear is, of course, our dependency on nature. Take, for instance, one very evident example like bee pollination. How many businesses are we invested in that depend on bee pollination? So getting around to address environment is key, and I know, of course, the EU taxonomy will eventually also cover that. Maybe Corinna would like to comment on the S and the G.
So just to take it into account, I think sustainability is E, S, and G. And it is not only environment, it is these three pillars. So it is environment, social, and governance. So all these 3 points has to take into account. Otherwise, it is not sustainable.
Yeah, and I think, Berenike, to your point, I also am of the firm belief that following a net zero and the climate-related objective, basically being the first one on the agenda, really also helps you in achieving social and government goals, because you cannot, or you can hardly imagine that you are successful on a net zero path without having the right governance structures, policies, procedures in place that allow us to manage towards such a long-term target. And similarly, in executing on the implementation towards this target, we need to take into consideration social dimensions, because otherwise we don't get the desired outcome nor the desired support from the society. So absolutely in agreement.
And these things are really tied together. I mean, we are very engaged in deforestation, for instance, in Brazil. Clearly, it's an environmental issue. It's a major social issue with the indigenous people. And of course, it's a governance issue in terms of enforcement of the forest code and the legal framework. So these things always tend to interact.
Maybe there are a few minutes left. I have a final question on my side. You touched upon a little bit. It's how do you engage with the governments, which sounds a hard part, a hard task.
Well, I'll sort of, as we're leading one alliance, engaging with the Brazilian and Indonesian government, here I think alliances are key. Because when you engage with governments, you know, we don't want to get involved in politics. We don't want to represent Norway or the European Union or any bloc as such. So again, having alliances that consist of investors or asset managers across the globe, if I may use that term, is really key. So, and I think that's an important thing to think about when you engage with governments. Mm-hmm. The other fact is, of course, governments is there are many stakeholders in government, so you have to prepare to engage with many different entities and for that matter, political parties.
Okay.
Probably just to go on to this question. So in the last month, we have engaged with various politicians with regard to understanding the major steps of the European sustainable finance ecosystem. But moreover, we discussed our bank's sustainable milestones, but we have not or never discussed political decisions. So our bank focuses lies on our own sustainability strategy and the most positive possible positive impact to economy and also society. So we are in various dialogues with politicians.
Okay, thank you. I think it's time to wrap up now. So I would like to thank you all. Thank the audience for answering the poll very correctly. It was the right answer. And thank you, the three of you and the organization. I think it was very inspiring, and I leave the floor to the next session.